The 80s were Michael Jackson's prime years in terms of commercial and artistic success, a success driven by the massive sales of the album Thriller, a modern music landmark that managed to innovate the sound of an era and, above all, become a huge cultural phenomenon that would forever shape Michael Jackson's life. And yet, that immense success would push Jackson to want to go on a solo tour to promote his music. But everything did a complete 180 when his family forced him to record an album and go on tour with his brothers.
Jackson's Victory Tour has been brought to you by Pepsi, the choice of a new generation.
The Victory Tour was, whether he liked it or not, the tour where Michael would promote the Thriller album and where he'd go on the road with his brothers, the Jacksons, for the very last time. Today, we can look back and see just how incredible that tour and that era were in terms of Michael's image and showmanship. But few people know that the Victory Tour, despite being incredible, carries the weight of being a show that Michael not only didn't want to do, actually came to hate, to the point where he tried to sabotage the whole thing. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the history of the Victory album and tour, a show that, despite being one of the biggest media and musical phenomena in the US in the 80s, and despite being one of the most important tours in Michael Jackson's career, comes with a troubled production, family drama, and media controversy. Without further ado, this is the complete story of the Victory Tour. Before the success of Thriller, Michael Jackson spent a big part of his musical career in the family group The Jacksons, made up of him and his brothers Jackie, Tito, Marlon, and Randy. Michael, alongside his brothers, would experience plenty of musical success, but separate from what was happening in the group, he had his own plans to grow as a solo artist. By the late 70s, Michael was no longer satisfied making the same style of funk music with his brothers. He wanted to start making a name for himself, so he began pushing toward a more cutting-edge and sophisticated sound, creating a rift between what he wanted and what his family wanted. And so while Michael was still active with the Jacksons, he released his album Off the Wall. That album would become a massive hit that marked the true beginning of his solo career, and at the same time, turned Michael into a global superstar who cast a long shadow over his brothers, something that was more than obvious at the concerts they performed in the late 70s and early 80s. In fact, by 1981, during the Triumph Tour, it was clear as day that Michael could carry the show without his brothers. Songs from his own album, like Rock With You, Off the Wall, Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, or even his latest original contribution, This Place Hotel, were the main reason people showed up to those concerts. Michael was drawing the world's attention far more on his own than alongside his family, so he started taking his desire to focus on his own thing a lot more seriously, without having to make music with his brothers. As the months went by after the Triumph Tour, the way Michael wanted to focus on his solo career began to create tension and concern among his brothers, who felt that the group and their income was at risk if Michael wasn't by their side. On top of that, while they were far from broke, Jackie, Tito, Marlon, and Randy were all starting to need more money to keep up the lavish lifestyle they wanted to maintain. So by 1982, a series of family conflicts started brewing within the group. While his brothers kept pressing Michael to do another musical project together, he kept his distance and simply told them he wasn't interested in making a new album with them at that point, mainly because Michael was already working on his next record, Thriller. On top of all this, within the family, Michael was starting to be seen in a less favorable light. Beyond the physical changes he was going through that were catching the family off guard, the fact that he simply chose to isolate himself from them to work on his own music was taken as a clear act of rejection. Even more so when you consider that around this time, Michael was more at odds than ever with Joseph, his father. because just months earlier, he'd fired him as his personal manager so he could handle his own music in peace, which only pushed him further away and made things even more complicated with his family. Even his older brother Jermaine, the one Michael had been closest to growing up, started not only rejecting Michael's decisions, but actually called Michael's upcoming album a failure that he shouldn't even bother trying to make, creating a more hostile and complicated dynamic between Michael and his family. Meanwhile, Michael spent months and months in the studio crafting sounds and new rhythms alongside Quincy Jones until in late 1982, an album was released that would change modern music forever. Within weeks, Michael Jackson's Thriller broke unbelievable sales records and set a new standard for what music could be. And this was even before any of the 3 music videos he'd make throughout 1983, because from the moment the album dropped, Michael was everywhere, and his commercial success was off the charts.
But the success of Thriller coincided with the production of Motown 25, a TV special that aimed to bring together the biggest stars in Motown history, and that, without anyone knowing it at the time, would forever change the course of his career. At the request of Motown president Berry Gordy himself, Michael Jackson and all his brothers were wanted for the special, and I mean all of them, since Jermaine had left the group a few years earlier, making it a perfect excuse for a reunion. Something Michael would initially turn down, but he changed his mind and agreed with one condition: performing the song Billie Jean, even though it wasn't a Motown record. And so in March of 1983, the complete Jackson family, Jackie, Tito, Jermaine, Marlon, Randy, and Michael, reunited on stage for the first time in years.
Oh, baby, give me one more chance. Sure that won't you please?
After all the family tension Michael had been going through, this performance brought his family, Joseph especially, to the edge of tears, seeing the brothers back together on stage.
That's it. I'll be there. Just look over your shoulders, honey. Ooh.
But everyone in that auditorium got the biggest surprise of all when that young Michael stepped into history with a one-of-a-kind performance, pulling off a move nobody saw coming.
After all the conflict and distance between Michael and his family, all of them, Jermaine included, were more than moved by what they were watching. And once again, Joseph was blown away and immediately started thinking about cashing in on Michael's unprecedented success with Thriller by bringing him and his brothers together for a new album and concert tour. As the show wrapped up, Joseph laid out his plan to Michael's brothers, who reacted with a lot of excitement over what it would mean for the family, and obviously, especially for their own wallets. Michael, however, immediately shot the idea down and told Joseph he wasn't interested at all, which only put them at odds again. While Joseph said Michael was just being selfish, Michael simply didn't want people cashing in on his success. His father and brothers made numerous attempts to convince Michael to agree to a new album and tour together, but nothing worked. Especially because Michael actually had his own plans, the Thriller Tour, a solo tour he'd been planning entirely on his own, without his brothers. And beyond just wanting to focus on his solo career, Michael also wanted the freedom to handle everything related to his music and his choreography. In other words, total creative control, since he was already, in a way, starting to cook up the ideas that would come to life in his later tours. Since the success he was having gave him the financial freedom to finally handle his career and creative process entirely on his own terms, doing a tour with his brothers held zero appeal, not even for the money. That all changed, though, when Joseph turned to Michael's mother, one of the few people in the family Michael actually trusted, and had her convince Michael to do the project with his brothers and help him out. That move, as calculated as it was, led Michael, after months and months of arguments, to agree to the plan, and only because his mother asked him to. He went along with it very reluctantly, though, and with certain conditions he'd lay out later. In mid-1983, Michael agreed to meet with his brothers to plan the next Jackson Family album.
Right now, we're preparing. We're producing this album, and Toto is co-producing.
And following the album, there's a big major tour following this big album starting in sometime in September. So this is going to be a world tour.
But unlike the other records Michael had made with them, this project would be flooded with conflicts of interest, both financial and creative, all of it magnified by the success of Thriller. Because while his brother's idea was to make an album that would catapult them even further to success, thanks to Michael, he would do everything he could to sabotage it, to make sure the project didn't do too well and prevent them from riding the coattails of the fame he built with his last album. And to start with, because of the tensions within the group and Michael's determination to keep his family from cashing in on his success, both he and the others would show up with lawyers in an attempt to protect their share of the earnings. While his brothers wanted to maximize their cut from the album, Michael wanted to make sure that whatever hits and money he generated went to him and him alone, turning this record into a legal puzzle where each brother's credits, rights, and earnings had to be spelled out, and where every disagreement would be settled through lawsuits and attorneys. This also pushed Michael to do everything he could to avoid being visually prominent in the project, so he'd have less of a hand in promoting the album. He refused to appear in any music videos with his brothers, and asked the artist commissioned for the album cover, painter Michael Willen, to please paint him in a way that made him as hard to notice as possible. That's exactly why Michael ended up painted so small and tucked behind his brothers on the cover. He clearly didn't want people to know he was even there, so the album would sell less.
And on top of that, unlike other musical projects where Michael worked his hardest, here he had no intention of doing more than 3 of the 8 songs they'd end up making. Always Be Mine, Torture, and, most importantly, State of Shock. This was a song he knew had hit potential, and he'd originally recorded it with Freddie Mercury, but scheduling conflicts kept the two from finishing it together, so Michael reached out to Mick Jagger to complete the duet and wrap up the track. In the end, despite not being very involved in writing the songs, the album would be called Victory, at Michael's request. It was originally the name of an unfinished song he'd worked on with the lead singer of Queen, and he liked it enough to use it as the title for the Jacksons record. The Victory album was eventually released on July 2nd, 1984, and received, to everyone's surprise except Michael's, mixed reviews. Critics praised songs like State of Shock and Torture, but felt the rest of the tracks didn't quite come together. And while the album did have solid songs like Wait and The Hurt, most felt that Victory didn't come close to what they pulled off with their previous record, and critics largely saw it as a step back in terms of the group's sound quality. Still, despite the stumble and the enormous challenge that making the Victory album had been for Michael, the worst was still ahead, with the other commitment he still had to fulfill. As I mentioned earlier, his interest in touring was limited to the idea of doing something as a solo artist to keep riding the wave of success Thriller was making. But once he agreed to his mother's request to support his brothers, there was no turning back. The moment he said yes, his father contacted a promoter who, for some reason, he believed would help run the tour more effectively, the businessman Don King. If you don't know who this guy is, Don King is a famous boxing promoter who's also known for being controversial thanks to his brash attitude and multiple accusations of financial fraud. But Don King wasn't hired because he was a trustworthy figure. He was hired because Michael's father believed he was the best option to maximize the family's earnings, especially because at their very first meeting, Don King offered Michael and his brothers $5 million, simply as a gesture of goodwill, something the other brothers were thrilled about, but that Michael saw more as a bribe. So for him, this was the first bad sign of what the Victory Tour was going to be. But under pressure from his family, a very unhappy Michael had to accept Don King as the Jacksons' promoter. Shortly after being signed by the Jackson family, Don King landed another $1 million deal, $5 million this time, from Pepsi, who would sponsor the Jacksons' US tour in exchange for filming 2 commercials for the soda company. For Michael, the idea of doing Pepsi commercials was absolutely crazy. Not only did he dislike the brand, but he also felt that appearing in commercials would cheapen and overexpose his image to the public. At this point, Michael couldn't do anything about it, because his brothers only bothered making decisions based on what the majority agreed to. So if Michael disagreed, it barely mattered to them.
And so, in November of 1983, Michael, the Jackson family, and Don King held a press conference to announce the Victory album and a tour of more than 50 concerts across the US and Canada the following year, kicking off in Kansas City, then moving through Dallas, Jacksonville, New York, Knoxville, Philadelphia, Denver, Montreal, Toronto, Chicago, Cleveland, Atlanta, Miami, Houston, and Vancouver, before finally wrapping up in Los Angeles, where the Victory Tour was planned to end.
As a fun fact, almost the entire press conference, which ran about half an hour, is lost. But from accounts, we know it was a complete disaster. Don King opened by showing the press a 15-minute documentary about his own life, then went on at length about how incredible the Jackson family was, how great the Victory album was, and literally said that anyone who attended one of the tour's shows would walk out a better person. This behavior infuriated Michael, who was put off by the total phoniness with which Don King spoke about his family, especially at a point in his life when he had more conflicts with them than ever.
I can't really say much today, but I would like to introduce some of the family here.
When the event ended, the brothers posed for cameras, and Michael, furious, left immediately. Now it was just a matter of waiting a couple of months to film, at Don King and the Jackson family's request, the Pepsi commercials they were obligated to make for the tour sponsorship. In early 1984, after successfully filming the first commercial, where he danced in the street, a tragedy struck during the second spot, in which Michael and the Jacksons appeared in concert. Due to a production mishap, Michael suffered a severe burn to his head from a pyrotechnics malfunction. This incident only made Michael feel more uneasy about going through with the tour alongside his brothers, and he admitted to his lawyer that he never should have done the commercials, or any part of the Victory project. But despite the shock and distress from the accident, and despite his deep dislike for Don King, Michael was committed to doing the tour. So, in time, he calmed down and recovered enough to begin rehearsals for the Victory Tour. The catch was that his burn left him dependent on strong painkillers just to get through the day, which ended up taking a toll on his physical condition heading into the tour. And that was a real problem, because this was a tour where Michael would be dancing with even more power and energy than in previous tours. On top of that, despite his doctor's instructions to eat well for the shows, by mid-1984, Michael still had certain eating habits that weren't helping. Beyond following a vegetarian diet, he was eating very little, so his overall health wasn't in the best shape for performing. That said, all things considered, 1984 was shaping up to be a huge year for Michael Jackson. He'd been picking up a massive number of awards and had been recognized by the media, even at the White House, as one of the most important artists of his generation, achieving not just unprecedented sales records, but full-on legend status. Still, as the dates of the first concerts approached, Michael's father, and especially Don King, decided to announce a ticketing strategy that was immediately condemned by everyone for its blatantly greedy intentions. Let me give you some context. The standard in 1984 was that a concert ticket might cost, at most, around $20. That was the going rate. But if you wanted to go to a Victory Tour show to see Michael Jackson and the Jacksons back then, the first thing you had to do was buy a $20 lottery ticket just for the chance to win the right to buy a concert ticket. And even if you won that lottery, the ticket itself cost another $30. And on top of that, you couldn't buy individual tickets. You were forced to buy them in a 4-pack. So between the ticket cost, the initial lottery ticket, and shipping fees, you'd end up paying over $180, an amount that, as you can imagine, was unthinkable at the time. And to make things worse, since this whole system was announced just a few weeks before the first show, there are documented cases of people receiving their tickets after the concert dates had already passed. Because of all this, media outlets across the US started tearing Michael Jackson apart like never before, even though he had nothing to do with the ticketing decisions. He was the face of the show, so he took the heat for all of it and was slammed by everyone as if Jackson himself were the greedy one. especially because the whole setup genuinely made the concerts less accessible for a lot of black fans. The whole situation enraged Jackson and forced him to draw a hard line with Don King and his father, threatening them that if they didn't change the ticketing system, he wouldn't do the Victory Tour. That sent shockwaves through the family, because changing the way they sold tickets, in their view, might mean not selling out every show. But they were forced to switch to a more normal approach, selling individual tickets at $30 at the box office. No lottery tickets, no 4-pack bundles.
In the end, on the eve of the Victory album's release and just days before the tour was set to kick off in Kansas, Jackson called a press conference to announce the change in the ticketing strategy and also to announce that his net earnings from the tour would be donated entirely to charity, proving that everything the media had been saying about him was false.
I want you to know that I've decided to donate all my money I make from the performance to charity.
A few days before the Victory Tour began, Michael and his brothers gathered in Alabama for a series of rehearsals, and it didn't take long for arguments to break out.
Hold on, wait, stop. Hold. You gotta give me something better than this.
As I've mentioned before, Michael had pushed for a whole new sound with Thriller, and doing music with his brothers made him feel like what they were playing live sounded mediocre. Nothing like what he wanted to hear. This led to more demands from Michael when it came to the set list, because on top of not being the least bit excited about promoting the new album with his brothers, he had his mind set on including songs from his own last album. So the tour would end up being built mostly around songs from the previous tour, along with 4 tracks from Thriller. Beyond that, Michael also put his foot down when he heard his brothers, who, in his opinion, sounded terrible on certain new songs. Because of this, songs like Thriller, Torture, and State of Shock were dropped almost immediately. A good example of this can actually be heard in a clip from the State of Shock rehearsals, which went from having a great electropop and rock sound in the studio version to sounding more like an amateur rock band during rehearsals. All of this led Michael and the Jacksons to work out the following set list in this order. The show would open with Wanna Be Startin' Something, followed by Things I Do For You, Off the Wall, Human Nature, This Place Hotel, She's Out of My Life, and a handful of songs Jermaine requested for the set, including his one duet with Michael. The set list was notably light on Victory album tracks, but that barely mattered because the shows would feature Michael Jackson's best songs, and he would essentially be the main attraction. That was, truthfully, the one and only reason the tour would end up being a success. And honestly, even though Michael wasn't happy with the sound he had alongside his brothers, because he had a more forward-thinking vision of what he wanted the shows to sound like, in my personal opinion, this is actually the tour where Michael Jackson sings his best. He performs the songs with more energy and a fresher voice than in later tours, which allowed him to hit higher notes.
Oh yeah. Oh no. Oh girl. Ooh!
On top of that, I'd say the energy Michael brought vocally, combined with the super funky energy and sound of his brothers and the musicians, created an extremely 80s and powerfully danceable sound. And when you mix that with songs like Billie Jean or Beat It, it made for a show that had something for every American audience. Outside of the music, though, some problems were becoming harder for Michael to ignore. Because of the medication he'd been on since the Pepsi commercial burn, and because of his poor eating habits, his physical performance dropped to the point where he started experiencing dehydration episodes he'd never dealt with before. Yet another obstacle in what was already a massive challenge. the Victory Tour. And so, after the ticket controversy and all the family, financial, and creative conflicts, the Jacksons kicked off the Victory Tour on July 6, 1984. Kansas City was the first stop, where the Jackson brothers were greeted by a massive stage designed by Michael himself, featuring over 2,000 chromatic light fixtures and, above all, its sheer size, which took up a full third of every stadium they played. That enormous stage would be the epicenter of the magic the brothers created across 55 concerts. The tour was expected to be an unprecedented event, and it delivered. The show opened with an introductory act built around a fantasy inspired by King Arthur and the Sword in the Stone, setting the stage for a show with a more epic feel than anything that had come before it.
Arise, all the world, and behold the kingdom!
After a thunderous buildup, Michael Jackson and the Jacksons appeared on a platform surrounded by blinding lights, making an entrance that left the entire audience on the edge of their seats. This tour, what had once been a soul boy band, had remarkably transformed and cemented itself as the biggest stars in pop music. The Victory Tour was a massive showcase of the best Michael Jackson and his brothers had put together up to that point, bringing their classic moves, while the performances and choreography had been elevated to a whole new level thanks to Michael. It was also during this tour that Michael Jackson debuted his signature look, a style that blended streetwear with the elegance of sequins and military-cut jackets, with him and his brothers bringing a wide range of styles and contrasts through every outfit worn on stage. The standouts for me are the opening jacket, the Beat It jacket, and especially the abstract design shirt Michael wore during the closing songs, all of them loaded with crystals, sequins, and sparkle from top to bottom. In my opinion, these are the most stunning, intricate, and memorable costumes from this entire tour. As the tour went on, though, Michael started raising a number of complaints about the production. For starters, right in the middle of the tour, and without consulting Michael at all, Joseph and his brothers brought in a production company to film the tour and release a home video version of a Victory Tour concert. Michael asked them not to go through with it, and when they ignored him, he hired his own film crew to shoot the shows on film reels so he could put out his own version of the Victory Tour, but we'll get back to that later. On top of that, another issue going all the way back to the very first show in Kansas was that Michael was unhappy with the low lighting levels during several acts, which he found way too dark for his taste.
People always told me, be careful what I do. Don't go around making young girls soft.
All of this, combined with the ongoing tensions with his brothers, the enormous stress, and above all the physical issues he was dealing with during his high-energy choreography, led to some serious physical breakdowns during certain shows. A clear example of this is the Dallas concert. Even though it was only the third show of the tour, by the final numbers, it was obvious Michael was deliberately holding back on his movements so he could sing better, since the dancing took so much out of him. It's especially noticeable when you compare it to other dates on the tour. Still, despite everything, the Victory Tour blew America away and gradually put Michael Jackson even more on the map, not just as a cutting-edge artist, but as a kind of cultural authority who managed to leave his mark on absolutely everyone. A big part of that was the massive buzz it generated in every city they visited, drawing famous and iconic figures from American pop culture to the backstage. People like Andy Warhol, Jim Henson, Madonna, and Bruce Springsteen, just to name a few.
As a fun fact, he didn't just invite them backstage, he actually brought legendary guitarist Eddie Van Halen out on stage to play the guitar solo he'd originally crafted for Beat It. Also, as part of his PR strategy and his approach to shaping his own image, Michael arranged meet and greets with police officers in the cities they toured through, getting filmed while jogging alongside them. That, combined with his strong lean toward military-style clothing both on and off stage, gave Michael an image of immense power, unlike anything any black artist had projected before. And if you really think about it, Michael, in his later tours and public appearances, managed to make a massive cultural statement through performances and stage presence that commanded attention just by standing in the middle of the stage. But I think during the Victory Tour, Michael did something he would never be able to do again, partly because of the vitiligo he would later develop. And that was giving the American public the most powerful image a black man had ever projected on a stage. Looking back on it, and in my personal opinion, seeing a Michael, before his skin lightened, wielding this level of influence over the masses was something that left a mark and changed American culture forever. In some ways, the fact that a black artist could be that important and that commanding meant that for the first time, all kinds of audiences, black, white, and Latino, came together to celebrate an artist of this magnitude.
Because for the first time, Michael hadn't just broken every kind of sales record, he had broken racial barriers. And on top of that, the Victory Tour would witness the phenomenon known as Michael Mania, a social wave where everyone wanted to be Michael Jackson. Absolutely everyone was drawn to his enigmatic persona, trying to copy his look and his moves. This tour was Michael's first major proving ground, showing the world exactly who he was and what he was capable of. And to top it all off, keep in mind that at this point, Michael was only 25 years old. So this is probably the stage of his life where he danced with the most energy and the most freedom.
When I see your next exhibition, woo, that I do.
For better or worse, despite all the problems he'd been dealing with, the Victory Tour was doing wonders for his personal image and his record sales. And as I said, from my perspective, despite the physical struggles and performance issues he went through, I think it was in some ways the stage opportunity Michael needed to firmly establish himself on a global level with an image that would define him going forward, the king of pop. But despite everything I just said, none of it was enough for Michael, because even though every show he did with his brothers was a total success and dominated the national news the next day, Michael was dead set against the family's new plan, taking the Victory Tour to Europe in 1985, a plan that very likely could have pushed his global standing as an artist even further. But by this point, Michael was done. He didn't want to be with his brothers anymore. And so we arrive at December 1984, the dates of the final Victory Tour shows in the Jackson family's hometown, Los Angeles. They would play a total of 6 concerts there, each night a success after the last. But something unexpected happened at the final show.
I want to hear you tonight.
During the last song, Shake Your Body, while the Jacksons had every intention of continuing the tour in Europe the following year, Michael decided during one of the song's breaks to deliver a message that would catch the entire Jackson family and the whole audience completely off guard.
Listen up. I'd like to say this is our last and final tour. And I think this is our farewell tour. Y'all been wonderful. It's been a long 20 years, and we love you all.
With that, Michael made a definitive break from his brother's group with an announcement nobody saw coming, a decision he'd kept to himself all the way until the last show of 1984, which left his brothers with nothing to do but force a smile and see.
Shake your body! Shake your body!
When it was over, Michael's father made his feelings crystal clear. He was furious that Michael didn't want to continue with what would have been the family's plan to extend their musical legacy to more parts of the world. But Michael, at this point, didn't even bother trying to convince him of anything. He simply wrapped up that final show in Los Angeles and walked away to start pursuing his own artistic plans. In the months and years that followed the Victory Tour, Michael never went on to do another project with his brothers, though they did perform together on a few occasions and appearances. But as far as any real collaboration goes, Michael ended his ties with the Jacksons at the Victory Tour, leaving a deep family wound in the middle of the massive success Michael Jackson had achieved with this tour.
But the story of the Victory Tour doesn't end there. Remember the part I mentioned earlier about Michael's brothers hiring a production company to film the Victory Tour concerts and release a show in home video format? Well, it turns out that years after the tour, specifically in 1987, right before Michael released the Bad album and headed out on the Bad tour, his father and brothers figured it was a good idea to cash in on the media buzz Michael was getting with the Bad album by putting out a Victory Tour concert on VHS and Laserdisc. Now, although Michael also had the tour on film, he had no intention of using that footage for a home video release. And while he wasn't exactly opposed to the idea in principle, the problem, once again, was that he found out about his father and brother's plan without being told anything and without being asked for his consent. So the moment he found out, he ordered the production of this VHS shut down immediately and had the copies already made destroyed, especially because they were trying to make money off his image right in the middle of the Bad album's promotional run. The footage sat in storage for a long time. Then, in early 2014, the Jacksons' YouTube channel uploaded, seemingly out of nowhere, a performance of This Place Hotel from the Victory Tour concert in Buffalo, which was part of the canceled release Michael's brothers had been trying to put out. The clip was eventually taken down from the channel, most likely because of legal issues with Michael Jackson's estate, since the video had been posted without any prior notice. And the frustrating part of all this is that while Michael's brothers have made it known on multiple occasions that they want to release this material, at the end of the day, whether it was Michael while he was alive or his estate now, they've been the ones blocking it from seeing the light of day. And it's been a standoff for decades. And while various pieces of core footage have surfaced over the years, it almost always ends up being low-quality material, VHS recordings, or at best, news segment clips, which is nothing compared to what the Jackson family must be sitting on, given that everything was shot on film reels. That was the case up until last year, when the Thriller 40 documentary released minutes of never-before-seen footage coming from the production company that worked with Michael on the Victory Tour, opening up the possibility once again that more material like that could surface in the future. To wrap things up, what I can say is that the Victory Tour was quite an ordeal that Michael didn't fully enjoy, and that's the truth. But despite that, there's no question that this tour was an unprecedented spectacle that managed to showcase just how massive an artistic and cultural phenomenon Michael Jackson truly was, bringing performances, styles, and acts worthy of a true pioneer of modern music, unifying the masses during an era when racism was widespread and breaking every kind of record that no one had managed to break before. That was the story of the Victory Tour. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd like to thank the channel's subscribers for supporting the creation of these videos. Thank you so much for watching. You already know you can help out by sharing, subscribing, and hitting that like button. And with that, we'll see each other in the next video very soon. See you then.